Alright guys, Wes here, welcome back to the channel, and it sounds like the Ghost is returning, and I cannot be more excited. So as you know, Ghost of Tsushima was one of the best first-party PlayStation games of the PS4 era, and it was the perfect evolution for Sucker Punch, the studio previously behind the infamous franchise. Since the launch of the game in 2020, Sony has confirmed a film adaptation is in the works, and a direct sequel has reportedly been in development for at least a few years now. But lucky for you guys, there's actually a lot more intel on this IP floating around the internet that you guys probably don't know. So today we're going to go over everything that we know about Ghost of Tsushima 2, including when it will be revealed, when it will launch, and what we can expect from that game. So in case you guys are living under a rock, Ghost of Tsushima was developed and released all the way back in 2020, and it really did seal the deal on the PlayStation 4. It was the end of the era, and it's regarded as one of the best open world games ever created. It took place in a large open world Japanese island and had you playing as a samurai trying to defend his island from Mongol invaders during the late 1200s. The combat was super engaging, and Sucker Punch went to great lengths to make sure their open world was more engaging and immersive than others at the time, which did rub some players the wrong way, but it was also seen as one of the game's best attributes by many others. It was and still is an absolutely beautiful game, and the PS5 re-release from 2021 looked even better. We're still obviously waiting for news on an official PC port, but I have a feeling that that's going to show up at some point in the very near future, especially if the sequel is as close as some insiders are claiming it is. I don't think there's any way the Ghost of Tsushima 2 drops before the PC port of the original game. Ghost of Tsushima sold over 9 million copies, which is super impressive for a brand new IP, and it's honestly more than enough to justify a sequel, even if nobody wants to officially announce it. Last month, we got our first piece of real Ghost of Tsushima 2 development news in a while, and it came in the form of a somewhat telling job listing for a technical gameplay designer. The listing stated that the new hire would help create gameplay systems that would expand interactions within PCs, and the environments which fans speculated would mean the sequel is going to build upon the first game's immersion factor. Ghost of Tsushima was praised for the way that it had the player interact with the environment in order to get from place to place, and this job listing definitely makes me excited to see how the sequel will build upon that, especially if they're going to bring more NPCs into the mix. Maybe you'll be able to ask random NPCs for directions, or maybe you'll talk to NPCs about where you're going and what they think of the location. The list of useful applications could be infinite. Either way, it's very interesting to see. The first game was all about getting you immersed in the world, and the sequel has a lot of awesome opportunities to build upon the original game's foundation in that regard. Now, with the strange lack of first-party PlayStation game news coming out of Sony recently, some fans have grown worried that Ghost of Tsushima 2 is actually not going to be coming out, or that the development has stalled. However, a report came out earlier this year that suggested that was quite the opposite. In case you missed it, Sony released a PS5 promotional video in February that strangely featured a brief piece of footage of what looked like Ghost of Tsushima 2, but as you obviously know by now, they still haven't confirmed that the game even exists. A few months later, trusted gaming insider Tom Henderson reported that he thought the game was pretty much ready, but was baffled as to why it wasn't announced yet. Now, it's unclear if Henderson meant that the game was pretty much ready to be revealed, or if he literally meant that the game was nearing the end of development, but either way, Sony is clearly keeping the Ghost of Tsushima sequel under wraps, and it's hard to tell exactly why. But this also means that when they do finally announce the game, the release date will likely be pretty close behind it. Over the last couple of years, a lot of major game publishers have been attempting to shorten their marketing campaigns, and one of the main ways they do that is by only announcing games when they're less than a year away from launch. So it's very possible that Sony is doing that same thing here with Ghost of Tsushima's sequel. I think it goes without saying that expectations for Ghost of Tsushima 2 are extremely high, and honestly, I think the longer that Sony waits, the higher those expectations get. The first game was critically acclaimed and a heavy Game of the Year contender, so obviously people want a sequel soon, but Sony has found themselves in a bit of a rough position throughout 2023, and that's only going to make people more and more eager for a good first-party single-player game. Jim Ryan recently announced that he was leaving PlayStation, and that was after a string of bad PR moves, including raising the price of PlayStation Plus, raising the price of the PS5 console in certain markets, and the recent reports that the highly anticipated Last of Us multiplayer game is now on ice. I think it's safe to say that 2023 was a great year for gaming, but it was kind of a rough time for Sony, and they're now in desperate need of a major win. I mean, sure, they've got Spider-Man 2, but they need more than one good game to make up for all of the PR blunders and just outright backwards business decisions made over the last 12 months. And a lot of PlayStation fans probably agree with me when I say that the first-party lineup for 2024 and beyond is looking very slim. PlayStation fans are eager for a good first-party single-player game, and if Ghost of Tsushima 2 ends up being a disappointment, it's going to sting really bad. PS5 owners need a confidence boost, and while I certainly think that Ghost of Tsushima 2 could be what the doctor ordered, the stakes are kind of high for it. It's a bit of an unfair position to be in, but that's just the way things are right now. PlayStation fans need a single-player banger after Spider-Man 2, and the more that Sony waits to release one, the louder the criticism is going to be. Next up, I'd like to reference some theories regarding where the story could take us for Ghost of Tsushima 2. Full credit on fortressofsolitude.co.za. In the article, they mentioned the second invasion of the island of Tsushima. They said this, and I quote, "The Mongolians have actually invaded Japan twice in history, and with the first invasion as the setting for the original title, it would only make sense for the second game to be set a couple years later during the second Mongol invasion, given that the second invasion was significantly larger and saw not only the Mongolian forces doing what they could to take on a united Japan, but also warriors from China and Korea. They said this is the most likely course to be taken for Ghost of Tsushima 2, and it would be a great opportunity for Sucker Punch to include larger scaled battles, and it would provide a lot more enemies with different fighting styles for Jin to take out." They continued by saying, given that Jin was essentially exiled after the events of the last game, we will probably see him working on his own to save his homeland from invaders once again. The next theory they said is there's a very high chance the Ghost of Tsushima 2 could expand on the past island of Tsushima and into the Japanese mainland. The second invasion was historically met by a large samurai force, and now with most of the island of Tsushima samurai killed, Jin will most likely have to travel to the mainland to win over the Shogun forces, where previously the Shogun was only ever mentioned and his forces seen occasionally. With a new threat coming, he will most likely have a larger role and play a big part on whether or not Japan is victorious. Check out the rest of the Fortress of Solitude website for more of their theories. Now, as for when we will get the reveal for Ghost of Tsushima 2, I would expect that it's going to be revealed at a big PlayStation showcase, most likely the one either in June of next year or around the first showcase that PlayStation does. Now, I do have some hope that it will be shown off at the Game Awards or teased at the very least, but I think it's more likely they will be revealed early next year. Sony has been hosting their own events and showcases more frequently, so I have my doubts that they will reveal a big first-party PlayStation game that's single player at a third-party event like the Game Awards, regardless of the amount of hype that it would generate. I also don't think it's very likely that we will get another state of play before the end of the year, so my money is on early 2024 for a reveal trailer. The next PlayStation showcase or state of play will likely be somewhere between January and March as a way to kick off the year and get fans hyped for the future of PlayStation 5. And if you ask me, that's where they're going to finally confirm Ghost of Tsushima 2, but there's also the likelihood that they're going to wait a little bit and then reveal it during the summer craze of game showcases like Summer Game Fest or the PlayStation Showcase for June of 2024. We all know that it's coming, but Sony will likely not reveal it until they're ready at an event of their own. Now, assuming I'm right about the reveal date, I think the release date will be somewhere between late 2024 and early 2025. And frankly, I think that it will be heavily influenced by the release date of GTA 6. With how successful the first game was, Sony is likely going to put a ton of marketing juice behind the sequel, but it really depends on how far in development Ghost of Tsushima actually is. I would hope that we get the new Ghost of Tsushima game by the end of late 2024, but it likely won't happen until the end of 2025. Either way, we know Ghost of Tsushima 2 is in development. How far along, we really don't know. Now let's talk about the platform for Ghost of Tsushima 2. As you guys know, PlayStation is currently working on a mid-generation refresh console, so it could be that Ghost of Tsushima 2 is actually going to be a launch title on that next console of theirs, which, like I said, will be a mid-generation refresh, likely called the PS5 Pro. Now it also could be that Ghost of Tsushima 2 is like the send-off for the PS5 era, just like Ghost of Tsushima 1 was for the PS4, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I think that they're going to give that time slot to Naughty Dog because that's typically what they do. Now, there is one possible hiccup that Ghost of Tsushima might have in terms of their release date and reveal, and that is just simply Rockstar's next game. Rockstar is reportedly going to reveal the launch window for GTA 6 by the end of this year, meaning Sony can wait a couple of months to strategize and make sure that they're not going to launch their own big budget open world game right next to the next GTA. So if Rockstar confirms GTA 6 is coming late 2024, I'd bet money that Ghost of Tsushima 2 will come out in early 2025. However, if GTA 6 takes that early 2025 window, I'd expect Sony to reveal Ghost 2 with a late 2024 release date. By waiting until early next year to confirm Ghost 2, it gives Sony a little extra time to assess what the market is going to look like in the next couple of years, so they can give it a clear runaway for launch and not risk having their sales eaten up by Rockstar. I know GTA and Ghost of Tsushima are two very different games, but that really isn't going to matter because once GTA 6 launches, that's the only thing that people are going to be playing and talking about for quite a long time. When Rockstar launches a game, other studios get the heck out of the way. That's just the way it is. But what do you guys think? Do you think we'll hear about Ghost of Tsushima 2 soon, or do you think we'll be waiting a while before Sony confirms it? With all of the recent bad news that PlayStation Studios has had recently, I think it would benefit them to just kind of say something sooner rather than later, but then again, they probably don't want to confirm the game until it's relatively close to release, so that way fans aren't sitting around twiddling their thumbs for too long. But with The Last of Us factions nowhere to be found and the future of first-party PlayStation games looking a tad bit grim, I think the world could use a Ghost of Tsushima 2 announcement by the end end of the year. So hopefully we hear something at the Game Awards, but let me know what your guys' thoughts are in the comment section. Make sure you're subscribed with your notifications turned on so you don't miss out on any future content. And until next time, this has been Wes, and I will talk to you guys again soon.